I came in 1946, and the landscape looked a little different then than it does now. We still had a house facing Second Street behind the high school, but it eventually came down and became, the space was used for the parking lot, because we have a lot of parking out there. There was a house next to the garage, and a family was living in that house. In fact, several different families lived there over the years. And next to the high school, there was a big house that was there for years, and it was kind of a boarding house. But I mean, they were close neighbors. Well, that house eventually came down, the house next to it, and the house next to that. So now we have 3 empty lots next to us, and on up First Street, every couple of houses, there's a vacant lot because they've been tearing down the old houses up the street. So things look a lot different than they did in '46. What looks worse is across what's that street out there? Distal. Right across Distal is a big red brick building that looks like it should have fallen down about 50 years ago. And it is on the list to be torn down, so that'll probably be the next thing to go. But and of course, when we put up the new building, we had to tear down the old public school that was across the street. We bought that, and we were using parts of it for a parking lot for the students. But when it was time to build the new Franciscan Activity Center, that building had to go. And then there was a building that we called the Old Tin Gym that was behind the school. So those all came down. The kids helped to clear away that debris from those houses and buildings. So the landscape has changed considerably around here, and I would say all for the better, because we have beautified the area. It doesn't look so run down now. That's just a few of the changes that I've seen since '46. Of course, when I was gone I left here in '55 and came back in '63. And during those years, they tore down a couple of houses. They tore down the old church and high school and put up this beautiful new building, so that by the time I came back in '63, here's this beautiful building. And instead of sleeping in the grade school, the convent was placed on the 3rd and 4th floors of the new building. And it was luxurious in my mind, because we each had our own private room. We had plenty of space for dining. We were all in one room. We had a laundry that was not in the basement. We had plenty of room for visitors. And we had we still have the beautiful chapel. So it was like coming into it seemed like luxury to me because of what we had before.
A little bit about the chapel. Did all that marble come from Italy and all that, like the church, or no?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
That's Italian marble in the church, isn't it? Or in the chapel. And I mean, it's just very lovely. And the mosaic at the back is a nice addition to it. We used to pray in there when there were 32 of us. We had night prayer, and occasionally we had Mass in there too. Father Kenny Hands was retired, and he used to come and say Mass. We had 2 sisters here, Sister Kenneth and Sister Edna were both stationed here at the time. but that was a well-used chapel then. Now with two of us, we don't go into chapel to pray. We have a little corner in the living room where we pray every evening. But the students, with the junior high up on third floor for 10 years, they use the chapel quite a bit. Well, now that the autistic children are there, I don't know that they use the chapel. However, they do come up from the downstairs. The high school and junior high do sometimes come up to use it.
Good.
It was August 28th, 1871, when Sister Ignatius and Sister Lucy arrived here. Today is the 28th of August, and it's the 145th anniversary of their first arrival. I'm sure they're up in heaven looking down at us and looking at what it has accomplished since they first arrived here.
And I'm sure that they're sad that the sisters are leaving in another week.
Yeah.
End of an era.
I love library work. I used to help Sister Clarice when I was in high school. I helped her in the library. And then I went to the College of St. Francis after I graduated from high school, and I minored in library science and worked my way through college working in the college library. Then in the summertime I was able to get a job at the Mansfield Public Library, which made me very happy. Then when I graduated, the Mansfield Public Library hired me, and the children's librarian was not due to come for another month, and then they gave me the job, and I was delighted. That was kind of a promotion because you worked very hard and you were a librarian for a few number of years before you were put in charge of a department. It lasted a month till she came, but it was nice. Then by 48, I decided I wanted to be Franciscan. And I was, after I went through the postulancy novitiate, the community sent me to Rosary College for library work. And of course we went, there were about 4 or 5 of us, we went in the summertime. And that was an experience. We were not too far from Rosary, and we had a taxi chartered every morning. They picked us up and got us there, and we took the streetcar home in the afternoon, and that was great. And then I was in different libraries from Chicago to Joliet to Fort Lauderdale. And in 1974, Sister Francine, who was the head of the LCWR Sisters program in the United States, needed some extra clerical help, and she asked if I could help her. I was chauffeur more than I was clerical, but that's okay. In the 2 years I was with her, I learned a lot about LCWR. But anyways, her job disintegrated in '76. Of course, my job disintegrated too. And Bob Kelly was the first lay principal of the grade school. He was hired in '74, and he hired me in '76. And it was good to be back home again. And I knew they put the library upstairs on the top floor,
Where we used to sleep.
where Sister Bernie slept very many years. It was all library now. And the librarian before me was not too excited about library work. But anyways, I had wonderful parishioners helping me. Climbing the 72 stairs, there were no facilities on that floor at all. A broken down drinking fountain, that was the best we could offer. But some of the people helped me, like Sheila McKenzie, she helped me practically 30 years while I was there. And the old card catalog went by the way, in 2000, and with the computers, they moved the junior high over to the high school. And the library did not need that much space, so they moved the library down to 201. And it was a perfect setting. With the computer, we didn't need as much room as we had with the card catalog. And by hook or by crook, I learned to computerize, how to check books in and out, and to even code books. So I worked, by 2010, I was looking toward retirement. I was in my 80s, and I thought it's time. I want to go while I'm still with it. So by 2011, 2010, I told Jim Smith was our principal, I told him I'm going to retire next year. And the people, some of them who had been helping me in the library, and a couple of other people in the parish, talked to Jim Smith, and they dedicated the library in my honor, and that was very nice. They have a little plaque with my picture on the wall outside, and then on the inside they have my name. And then also I had a very dear friend from college days who had a daughter who was a self-made, well, she wasn't a millionaire, but she did very, very well. She had her own business. And she said, "What would you like in the library?" I said, "Oh, I'd love to have a mural." The one wall was completely blank, no windows, nothing. And she said, "Go for it." So one summer, a lady came in and did Francis and the Wolf on the wall of the library, which is still a treat today. And then I gloried in telling the first graders the story of Francis and the Wolf. And I think the present librarian does that today too.
Good. That's a nice picture up there. And I imagine it catches the kids' attention too, doesn't it?
You know, all the animals, she put all kinds of animals in the woods on the other side of Francis, yeah.
And the wolf looks fierce.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. Well, when I graduated from college and was sent out here to St. Peter's, I remember Sister Borgia, who was on the council at the time. She told me, she said, "You have a deep voice, so you'll be good with the boys out there." And she herself had a very low-pitched voice, I thought. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, what is this all about? So I got on the train and came to Mansfield. There were 32 of us living in the little house of 7 gables, and when I saw the size of the house and the number of sisters, I was trying to figure out where we would all sleep. But I soon found out that the 12 youngest, and of course I was the very youngest, the 12 youngest slept up in 72. We called it 72 because you had to climb 72 steps to get up there. So you were ready for bed when you got up there. And unfortunately, there were no facilities up there except a dump sink to get some water. The restroom was down on the next floor down, which was the 3rd floor. And of course the bathtubs were in the house, but there were only 2 of them, so we took turns, of course. But the school facilities weren't much better. The physics lab and the chemistry lab were in the same room, one at each end, and at the time I wasn't teaching either of those things, so I really wasn't too concerned about what was there. My classroom was on the 3rd floor of the grade school because I had a freshman homeroom. I taught algebra to the freshmen, and that was convenient. But in order to teach geometry, I had to go down from the third floor of the grade school, out the door, across the street, up the steps to get into the high school, and then up more steps to get to the sophomore homerooms where I taught geometry. And then when I was finished teaching geometry in the morning to one class, I repeated my steps. And then my other geometry class was in the afternoon. So needless to say, those first years I got plenty of exercise. Well, I was young and healthy. Who cared what you had, how long you had to walk, or where you had to walk? So that was the first few years. Probably about the fourth or fifth year I was here, but I learned a great deal in those first 3 or 4 years, I'll tell you. I learned how to teach better. I learned how to handle teenagers, and each year I improved. So after about 4 years, I believe, I was promoted to sophomore homeroom. So then I had to repeat my process. I had to go from the sophomore room down the steps and up to the third floor of the grade school to teach the freshmen. So again, I got plenty of exercise those first 9 years. At the end of 9 years, Monsignor Goebel got sick and spent time in the hospital, and near the end of the school year, he died. With that, there was a great shake-up among the sisters. I think out of the 32, I think about a fourth of us were transferred that year. I was transferred to Chicago for 2 years, and then I was sent to Columbus. In those days, it was the old South End. Now it's German Village. I was there 2 years. Then I was sent back to South Chicago for 4 years. And then, oh happy day, I was sent back to Mansfield. But it was an entirely different Mansfield. It was a new Mansfield with the new building, the new living quarters, and it was just great. So, and by then, I was a junior homeroom teacher, and I was teaching chemistry and physics because, well, I hadn't gone to Notre Dame yet, but eventually I did. So, I continued teaching, and I was teaching algebra and geometry still. And then 1 year, after I'd been here, no, that's wrong. By the time I came back here, I had graduated from Notre Dame. I graduated in '62, and this was '63. Big mix-up here. So that's why I was able to teach chemistry and physics, because I already had my master's in that. It was when I was in Chicago that I got the shock of my life. Every summer we went, in those early days, we went to school every summer, we went to college. And one summer I had been a math major, and I decided I didn't want to take any more math, so I said, I'm going to try chemistry. So I started chemistry, took the first semester of college chemistry. When fall rolled around, they told me I had to teach chemistry. Wow. I said I only had the first half, and they said, well, teach the first half then. So I had to brush up every night to prepare for the next day. And because I was in Chicago and I needed more chemistry, I went to Joliet every Saturday and took private chemistry classes with Sister Joan, God bless her. She would teach in the morning, I would have lectures, and then that afternoon I would spend the whole afternoon in the lab doing experiments, and then I would get on the late train to go back to Chicago. But at least I felt a little more secure teaching. And we did stuff like that in those days. So here I am back in Mansfield, well prepared to teach chemistry and physics. I had minored in physics at Notre Dame. That was a great 6 summers that I spent at Notre Dame, the Notre Dame in South Bend. About, was it 5, 6 years ago they renovated? I think it's about 5 years since they renovated the science department. We had good equipment for when it was built in '58, but we needed some modernizing and some updating. So we had a fundraiser to raise funds for the renovation of the science department. Now at St. Peter's, the science department is on the ground floor in the west wing of the building. We have a chemistry lab, a biology lab, a biology lecture room. Down in the corner we have a physics lab, and we have a physics lecture room, which is the best room in the entire building. It is tiered so that it's like a college classroom where you have I think there are probably 6 levels, and it made it good for everyone watching what you were doing. It did not make it so convenient for exams, because anybody with good eyesight could see the row in front of them. They could see their paper. So when we took quizzes or tests in the lecture room, I always made them turn their chairs around so that they're looking upward at the back of the child in front of them. So it worked pretty well. When the renovation was finished, I was told to come down to the science level. By that time I had well, I have to go back a little bit. In 1996, I was teaching full-time, and they asked me to take a year off to help raise money for the new building that was in the plans. This was '96. Father Kennedy was the principal, and he said, "You could be a big help in raising money because you know everybody and their grandmother," which there was some truth to that. So I did take the year off. Fortunately for me, that year continued. I'd been teaching 50 years, and so I thought, 50 years is a good long time. I would like to quit teaching while I'm still effective. And they wanted me to continue in the development department, so I did. That 1 year stretched into 18. Well, it stretched into when we get brought back to Joliet, which is right now. Well, anyway, when they finished the renovation of the science wing, they told me to come down to they wanted to show me something. Well, when I got down there, here on the wall is a plaque with my picture on it and a dedication, and here's a big sign that says, Sister Bernard Marie Campbell Science Wing. Whoa, that was really something. So, it was something.